I want to thank you for agreeing to give an interview. And let us ask you a few questions. Our first question. Your second book is published in Russian, and we will hint that it will not be the last. We consider it a great happiness that you have written 9 books. Can you tell us which one is most important to you?
Probably not this one. Although this one is important, the one that is closest to my own heart is one that's published under the title of Raising Happy, Healthy Children, because it was the one book I was able to write putting not only my professional knowledge, but what I have learned from being a parent myself many years ago, from being a grandparent, and to be able to write about child development, not from an adult's perspective, but from the perspective of what does a child actually need from the environment around it. So what I've tried to do is write about the universal biological needs of children, irrespective of fads and fashions and cultures and so on. So that's probably the one that's most important to me.
Oh, thank you for us too. And our second question?
Yeah, our next question is, Sally, could you please briefly describe who this well-balanced child is?
That's a huge question. I think if I go back to the work of somebody called Ray Barsh, who in the 1960s wrote some wonderful books on motor perceptual efficiency, he described the young child in the first year or years of life as being a terranaut, not a terrorist, but a cosmonaut or an astronaut on terra firma, whose first job, he said, was to become confident and competent in the use of their physical body in space. And he said this was incredibly important because posture and balance together provide the stable platform for centers involved in the control of eye movements. So they are going to support visual perception needed for reading, for writing, for catching a ball, for copying, and so on. So that sense of confidence in the use of your own body not only makes you feel secure in a gravitational sense, but provides a solid basis for many other skills. So for me, that's the beginning of the physical part of the well-balanced child, although of course there are many other factors such as social, emotional, intellectual, and so on.
I think that it will be very new information for Russian readers. So you have a lot of experience working with different children. How many of today's children do you think are well balanced?
This is a difficult one because we can only base it on the research that we have done in pockets within schools in the UK and in a number of other European countries. But if we go back to a study done in 2004-2005 with about 800 children, they found that, let me just check my figures, 48% of 5 to 6 year olds and 35% of 8 to 9 year olds still had traces of infant reflexes active, which should not normally be present beyond the age of 6 to 12 months. And if they are, they provide indications of some degree of immaturity in the functioning of the central nervous system that is going to undermine some of the expression of higher related motor skills. So we can't say that that sample was representative of the general population, but other small-scale studies elsewhere have come up with very similar figures. So in Spain, for example, it's come up at about 40%. A recent study carried out in Russia by Unitalia also suggested about a 40% incidence, with a much higher degree being present in boys than in girls, which is a whole other story for another day, perhaps. But it's not unusual to find that boys are potentially at a disadvantage educationally when placed in the same setting as girls if they are expected to be able to sit still and carry out fine motor tasks to the same level as girls.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. And Sally, could you please tell us why this book may be of interest to parents and why to specialists?
I think it gives a completely different perspective on why children might be underachieving in school. And instead of simply looking at the learning environment or the innate cognitive abilities of the child, it asks the question, why? is the physical basis necessary to support learning actually in place to the level it should be? And if it isn't, we can anticipate these children are going to underachieve or underperform in some way or another. So it's helping both parents and specialists to look beyond the symptoms or beneath the symptoms and say, right, there have to be some underlying mechanics that are contributing to this difficulty. Let's start examining those underlying mechanics.
Okay, yeah. So what other resources does the Institute have to help parents and professionals?
Right, again, I have to remember a list or I forget things.
Of course.
So first of all, clinical practice, where we carry out the assessment and supervision of remedial programs with individual children. Then a school-based screening test and developmental movement program designed to be used with a whole class of children, irrespective of whether they are identified as having problems or not. And that's enabled children who might not otherwise be able to access a private program to be able to have some form of this intervention free at the point of delivery. And it's picking up children who might not otherwise have been identified as being in need in the classroom. We provide training to teachers and other professionals in how to do some of this work. We provide informal play-based programs, of which this book, The Well-Balanced Child, its final chapter has a taster, if you like. It has a little story with exercises that it suggested that parents play along with their children at home, to give parents something that they can do to address some of those underlying difficulties. And then in a more general sense, we provide education and awareness to parents, to other professionals about why these factors are so important in understanding child development and understanding problems of either an educational or a behavioral nature.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally, for interview, and thanks a lot for your great job that you have been doing for 4 years.
No, 35 years.
4 years. Oh my God, no, 40 years. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so yes, between 30 and 40 years. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. So huge experience.
Half a lifetime.
Yeah, half a lifetime. Yeah.